Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Structure. My name is Elle Stone, aka the Ancient Ninja. Thanks for clicking and wanting to watch my video. If you're a fan of this channel or subjects like these, then I don't think you'll have any problem keeping up. Though I do want to point out that this is a very, very complex topic today, and it's going to require broad thinking and, of course, an open mind. So first, I want to kind of break down the components of today's video and the things I'm going to make connections in between. I'm going to be connecting the shape of the Earth to the torus and the torus field, and how those are proven and correlated through the depiction of the Garden of Eden in the book of Enoch. And I'm going to kind of also point out how those all correlating together is one good reason, among others, why the book of Enoch is not included in many of the canonized versions of the Bible. The Ethiopian one is the only one that I'm familiar that it's actually included in. So follow along, and as always, I will drop some of my sightings below. But when it comes to these connections, it's vast thinking on my part, and yeah, I hope that you guys enjoy the video. So first, we need to break down what is a torus and what is a torus field. So a torus, by definition, is a surface of revolution generated by revolving a circle in three-dimensional space, one full revolution, about an axis that is coplanar with the circle. I want you to remember that part is a surface of revolution generated by revolving a circle. And I'll come back to that later and explain how that kind of correlates with the book of Enoch as well. So a torus field is just that. It is the field that is organized around the torus. If you're not familiar with the concept itself, you may be familiar with the spiritual term that people associate the aura of a human being, the electromagnetic field that surrounds us and allows our energy to flow. A torus field, in scientific terms, is a self-organizing system that expands its energy outward and then returns to its center. So if you look at a torus, it is almost kind of like a donut shape with the hole going through the middle. And I'm going to connect that a little bit later as well. That all kind of correlates into everything. And the torus field would be that the energy, the electromagnetic energy circulating with and throughout the torus. So it's important to understand that shape and what that is and how the field works as we're going into understanding the shape of the Earth. So when it comes to the shape of the Earth, this is a hot topic nowadays. I've seen this talked about all over the internet, and most of the time it's almost one of those subjects that has been so heavily scrutinized, I guess is the word, that it's now kind of become almost useless to talk about because people are just so driven in their ways. And that's mainly because a lot of people believe NASA, believe what NASA says, they believe our history, they believe all of those kinds of things. There are also people that I think are too far gone into conspiracies, such as the Flat Earth Society. The Flat Earth concept that is talked about in a, I guess, globally recognized, I use that terminology, that's recognized by most people, the disk in space, that I believe, including the Flat Earth Society, is a psyop. because it so far deters from everything, and also definitely contradicts what NASA says, right? So anyone that even is remotely believing that or basing what they're thinking off that, it's going to come with people thinking they're crazy. And also, it's not the true meaning of flat Earth. The actual flat Earth that it's based biblically, and not the biblical that I'm going to go into, but it is the firmament, and it's the flat Earth with the firmament. And there's still a reason why people believe that it's a flat Earth, but it's not a disk in space. So there is a lot of confusion around that, and people do not seem to want to come to an understanding. I'll see things online, and it seems like people just want to make fun of things, and if they believe NASA, then they definitely aren't going to even entertain the idea of anything else. I will go ahead and point out I do not believe everything that is being told to us. I believe that reality is hidden from us in many ways, and a lot of that does start with government agencies like NASA. We could go into a whole different video about NASA. Not going to talk about that in detail. We're just going to go into why I believe they aren't telling the truth, and the pictures and things like that aren't correct, and what I believe is the shape based off of all of these components that I mentioned. So we just discussed the torus field and the torus. Now, we are going to look at it in the way that Nikola Tesla and many others have looked at it, and that's electromagnetically. Now, we know that the torus field operates electromagnetically. Now, we are told that gravity is the only thing that exists, that the main element that is controlling not only the way the Earth works, but also the shape of the Earth. And just believing in the concept of gravity as it is does form our opinion and the way that we can logically explain that the Earth is this perfect sphere. Even though if you look on certain NASA pages, they'll tell you it's not a perfect sphere, but yes, they're taking pictures and showing pictures. So it's just, I think they want to confuse you. But all of these assumptions of the shape of the Earth are based off of gravity, essentially, and the concept of gravity. And this is true. So I'm going to start reading some things. I use chat a little bit, chat box, because I know people are going to watch this and automatically scrutinize what I have to say. That's the second time I've used that word. So I went to chat so I could have chat take what I was thinking and ask it and see kind of what it thought and if it can make sense of it. Okay. So when it comes to electromagnetism and the way it works in the torus field, if we were to say that gravity, instead of the main component that determines the force and the shape of the Earth, if we would say that it was actually electromagnetic, like many great minds have said and nearly proven, I believe they've proven, and most of them erased from history, like Nikola Tesla. I want to do a video on him as well. Side note, I have tons of research on him and a lot of the stuff he believed with pyramids and electromagnetism. So if we are to say, hypothetically, okay, we're going to say here hypothetically, gravity is not a main component. Gravity is essentially a product of electromagnetism. So the Earth being electromagnetic, like a torus field, then gravity, as we understand it, would be a result of those electromagnetic interactions. Okay? So that doesn't mean gravity is not real and that it doesn't exist. Everything obviously exists and is real in some capacity, but it can be real and wrong. So if we were to look at it in that sense, Earth is electromagnetic and gravity is a result of the interactions of the electromagnetism. We could see the Earth working as a torus field with the energy going and flowing. And that would change the concept and shape of what we would think the Earth is. So I asked chat this. I said, hypothetically, say gravity was more of a result of electromagnetism. And electromagnetism was the main component of force. Would that change our concept of the shape of Earth? And chat said yes. If we hypothetically assume that gravity did not exist and Earth's shape was instead determined by electromagnetic forces, the shape of the Earth could indeed be different. Now, this is where it gets very interesting. When you ask chat, so based off of this hypothetical thought, could Earth then be a torus field or a torus instead of a sphere? That would make more sense with electromagnetism being the dominant concept instead of gravity. And it said yes. Electromagnetic forces might lead to irregular shapes with bulges or indentations depending on where charges or magnetic fields are concentrated. If gravity did not exist and Earth's shape was determined by other forces, such as electromagnetic forces, the possibility of Earth being a torus cannot be entirely ruled out. And then it proceeded to play that scenario to me and how that would work. And earlier, how I mentioned, if you go to a NASA page, some of them will say like it's not perfectly shaped spherically because we're spinning so fast in outer space, which I don't believe Earth is spinning in outer space. It doesn't make a lot of sense when you look at everything based off of what I'm talking about. I don't believe we're spinning in the middle of outer space and everything's moving. I believe that is another concept just to pull us away from our divinity even more, which I'll explain as we go down. That would, in turn, be a reason why they're saying we're spinning, right? So they're putting a little bit of truth in there to you. They're saying, oh, well, it's irregularly shaped because we're spinning on outer space. Not that the Earth is electromagnetic. No, it's because we're spinning in outer space. We don't want you to know the Earth is electromagnetic because then you would then put together that you too, oops, are electromagnetic. You see how that works? How even just the smallest change of information to us can change how we perceive our existence and everything around us. It's important, and you should pay attention to it because that is quite literally how information is taken from us in little bits, and little bits of truth are left, and little bits of information are changed, and it completely changes everything. It's kind of like the butterfly effect in a sense. So, going off this idea that Earth is electromagnetic, like a torus field, we then would put together the idea that the Earth is shaped like a torus rather than a sphere or a bumpy sphere, as they're trying to say. And this shape would also back many other theories like the hollow Earth theory, where there's an entry at the top, because the way that it would work, there would be, when you look up a picture of a torus. So this concept also backs a lot of other theories about things. So we went over what a torus is, the torus field, and how those are related to the shape of the Earth based off electromagnetism and how the torus field works. Now, how does the book of Enoch come into this? How does it demonstrate the idea of this being a torus and a torus field? Well, when you start reading in the book of Enoch, and I'm going to correlate not only how it demonstrates it being a torus and a torus field, but also how it correlates that in the Garden of Eden, the apple that's eaten is essentially the torus. It's Earth. Earth is the apple. We are on the apple. So I'm going to pull these together and how the book of Enoch even further demonstrates this with its depiction of the Garden of Eden. And it, of course, is a little bit similar to how we see it in Genesis, which you guys, if you watch my channel, you know how I feel about the Torah. Don't think the Torah is accurate. So I don't think Genesis is accurate, and I have another video, which I'll link at the end, when I went into some details on the Garden of Eden itself. So we're going to break this down by the lines. And if you're enjoying this video so far, give it a like. Be sure to subscribe. I really enjoy being able to talk about these things, and I hope that y'all are watching this and keeping up and excited to listen. So we're going to start reading a little bit of Enoch. In the book of Enoch, the second book, the Garden of Eden, it talks about it. The tree is of ineffable goodness and fragrance. Its root is in the garden at the earth's end. And paradise is between corruptibility and incorruptibility. And two springs come out, and they separate into 4 parts and go round with quiet course. So first, I'm gonna correlate how that first part has to do with it relating to the apple. But I want you to pay attention to where it says the four streams. It separates into 4. The 2 streams separate into 4 parts. Now, in adjusting my little light there a little bit, it's the sun is setting, so I have a window right there. So I want you guys to be able to see me. So obviously, in Genesis, there is this concept that the four springs, the 2 springs that come out that go into 4, are talking about literal springs that are on Earth. I don't think that's what it's talking about. I think it's referring to the 4 structures of the human body. So when it says the root is at the earth's end, and it separates into those 4 parts, which, by the way, it says the springs come out and separate into 4 parts. Okay, and the translations obviously are off on these, but in Genesis it tries to say that it's like rivers, that it separates into 4 rivers. And of course, translations are mixed. However, we're focusing on the 4 here. The 4 structures of the human body is cells, tissues, organs, and systems. Would it be a stretch to think that the 4 parts of which the root's separating out in represent the toroidal, the torus field going into the torus, and that's the human connection into the earth. And that also is our torus field, because I believe that our bodies are a representation of everything that is around us. So that's why we see a lot of ourselves in the earth already, our fingerprints, our eyes, the way we're structured. That is represented already in parts of earth and trees and things like that. So in understanding that, it would not be a stretch to think that the 4 parts that it is expanding into represents the 4 systems of the human body. So now going down to, and I'm going to be going kind of up and down in the book of Enoch, because this is relating different parts of it to how I'm trying to put this all together. And so also, if you read down, it talks about after the exile from the garden, Eden withdrew its presence from the earth and then was subsumed into the 7 heavens and sent to the 3rd heaven. The 3rd heaven, if you know your celestial realms and your celestial bodies, would be represented by Venus, which would mean Venus is not just a planet, it's a plane of existence, which is what I believe planets are. They're planes of existence. They're fields of divinity, essentially, different dimensional fields of divinity. That would prove that everything is more than just scientific and based in logic and I guess what do you want to say if you try to make everything seem so simple, that it's more spiritual and celestial than the, I guess, popularized, canonized version of the Bible is, because it makes it seem so earthly. It's four rivers, that it's separated into parts, that the garden is here on earth, all of those things. The garden was subsumed into the celestial realm after the exile. So the garden was no longer on earth in the book of Enoch. That, in a sense, could represent the awakening that humanity goes through, the Kundalini, which is represented by the serpent in the Garden of Eden. And if you've read the secret book of John, you would know that Christ is represented through the snake. And we also have other depictions in ancient text of the serpent not being seen as bad. The serpent is actually only seen as a bad thing in, I guess, modern Christianity, people that are heavily read the King James version of the Bible. Those are the only perspectives that see the serpent as quote unquote bad. There are other even ancient texts that were left out of the Bible, like the secret book of John, that were deemed Gnosticism, that state that the snake is represented through Christ, that we essentially had to eat the apple. This was a part of our journey as human beings. This was how we went through our hypothetical inferno. We had to go through our awakening, our kundalini, our snake, our serpent. That's also represented in the garden. So that's how the Garden of Eden is such an essential story that you have to break down in these manners, because it does tell a lot. And the more you do research and the more you understand it, you realize a lot of that the Bible is kind of essentially a key that unlocks a lot of these secrets. And I want to point out too, when it says in the beginning that the tree's root is in the garden is at the earth's end. So the tree being at the earth's end, if you look up what the earth's end is, it is the Carmine line. The Carmine line is essentially right there before the atmosphere. It's at the top of the earth. So it's not in like all the way down. It's essentially at the top of, it's right there at the top of the earth. And I'll link it below so you can click on it and see it. When you look at the origin of Carmine, which is karma, the definition of karma is the sum of a person's actions in this and previous states of existence, viewed in deciding their fate in future existences. Essentially saying, eating the apple, falling to earth, earth is the apple, this is how we decide our soul's journey going forth. So again, this is a completely spiritual concept that's not touched on in Genesis and also is not recognized in Christianity. Now, how is the Garden of Eden and the apple correlated to all of this? How is the apple correlated to the earth? Why do I say the apple is the earth? Well, just like I was talking about the root being at the Carmine line, the root could theoretically symbolize the stem of the apple, aka the tip right there. What is the old superstition or wise tale that you know about an apple when it comes to the stem? You twist it off. You twist, you keep going until you get to the name, that the letter that's supposed to be your soulmate, essentially, right? And it pulls off and the apple releases from the stem. Looking at it hypothetically, when we ate the apple in the Garden of Eden, and in the book of Enoch, the Garden of Eden is then sent up to the third heaven, the stem is taken off and then remains the apple, which is similar to the torus and the torus field. The torus field is very much like an apple in the sense that the core of the apple and the core of the human heart which is why I like to say, and I've said this before, that fallen, when it says we fell, like it does in the main canonized version of the Bible, depicting it in a bad way, it doesn't mean we fell sinfully. It means we fell for love. Just like you twist the stem and pull it off. We are falling because we have to eat the apple. We have to experience this. We have to become love. We have to understand our soul's journey. So all of these are hypothetically linked to some of the little tricks that we know with the apple. And a lot of these things, a lot of these incredible, intricate secrets of life, clues can be found in little things like that. Like, oh, twist the stem of your apple. It's like, I wonder where that originated from. What if it's essentially the human being journey? So, we eat the apple. That is a metaphor for the torus-shaped earth. That is a metaphor for us falling to earth. We're eating the apple. We're recognizing our divinity in a sense. We're being cast out. Dante's Inferno. We have to go through all of this to come out better on the other side. We're twisting the stem, aka leaving the garden. The apple falls. And then remains the torus, the apple. The torus field, the energy moving. The roots are released. And voila, we are now in this electromagnetic field of existence known as Earth, which is a plane of its own, a very, very interesting plane. So that's how these things relate through the book of Enoch. And when you read the book of Enoch, you start realizing, especially even in something like this, that that's why the book of Enoch was left out of the canonized versions of the Bibles, the main ones that are distributed, because it completely contradicts the Torah and Genesis, and also shows that existence is much more than the literal concept of how things are seen. It is much more metaphorical. Now, I'm not saying there isn't a literal garden that exists. Even in the book of Enoch, it says the garden exists, and it's a place where the best people come to, that it is guarded by angels, and it is it's prepared for the righteous who endure all manner of offense from those who exasperate their souls, who avert their eyes from iniquity and make righteous judgment and give bread to the hungry and cover the naked with clothing. All these great things. It being in the third heaven now is the celestial realm. It is the heaven. When you do research into Venus and everything when it comes to the celestial heaven. And I'll also put a map on here so it kind of breaks down the celestial realms as well, according to other ancient texts. That is where Christ would reside, in the celestial heaven, the third heaven. And I actually had a dream when I was a child. I believe that's where I was brought. That is where I was brought to. So, putting all these things together, you also then look at in the Bible, Jesus experienced hell in the garden. That was a big story. Christ experienced hell, the 40 days, 40 nights of him experiencing hell in the garden, having to go through that, essentially his Dante's Inferno, which is also a good reference in tying all these together. So the garden is representative of us eating the apple, aka falling to the torus, the earth. The earth is the apple. The stem is the Carmine line. The stem is the roots, where it was then released and sent up to the third heaven. And we are living in a torus, the torus field, not only around us, but around the earth itself. And this is essentially our karma. And karma isn't what the popular definition, I read it earlier. It's not like what you get, what you reap, what you sow. It is how we decide our fate going into future existences. So if you look at the way that NASA and government agencies explain the earth and the universe, you'll see it's much more of a less spiritual, less divine way of looking at it. that creates this idea that we're just on this spinning ball in the middle of outer space and we don't matter and nothing matters and who knows what our purpose is, yet the Bible is distributed. And so it's like they want you to believe in this fairy tale to keep you going so you can constantly think of a savior, but they're not fully giving you the full story that this is much more of a spiritual divine experience than you think. So yeah, I hope breaking that down, it was you guys put it together really well. I know that was quite a bit to explain, but I hope that it made sense. And I would love to hear what you think on this. If you have opinions, what you know about the book of Enoch, how you think of my connections with the book of Enoch's depiction of the garden and the apple, and how the apple relates to the shape of the earth, and how the shape of the earth is a torus in the torus field. And I don't believe that we can get pictures of the earth. I believe all those are CGI. And yeah, so if you're someone that is a huge NASA fan, you're watching this, feel free to say something. But I think that they've incredibly brainwashed people. So this concept and this idea is so far from what you're even going to consider entertaining. But if this is something that you do think is interesting and you want to give me your thoughts, I would love to hear them. So yeah, that is all for today. And I'm happy that if you've gotten to this part of the video, that you've watched all this. Hope that you learned something and that you are even more curious. And always stay curious, because reality has been hidden from us and things are not what they seem. As always, keep it pointy.